Now, our next speaker is actually someone who needs no introduction, so I'm going to keep it really short. He's an ace investment banker and a veteran of the Indian market for over 2 decades. Please put your hands together for the founder of Enam Securities. Please welcome Vallabh Bhanshali.
Thank you, CNBC, for having me here. Good evening, friends. Speaking late on an event like this has a lot of hazards. And particularly if I missed half the forecast and half the discussion. But it's an exciting moment. And when I think about CNBC, I think there is such a great relationship between what you have done, what you have gone through, and I think what lies ahead. Firstly, I must congratulate you that I think in the last 15 years, there were a lot of people who tried to get into your position. You did not let that happen. You continued to rule, and that's a fantastic achievement. We've seen a lot of up and down in these 15 years, and now we seem to be on a period of up, up, and up, and whether that is possible. And obviously, I think we heard very interesting views on different aspects of the market. But my thoughts are not into forecasting, really, as much as a consciousness that what got us here will not take us there. And clearly that has been the story. And let me just recap some of the last 15 years, that how complex the world is, and if anything, it is getting more complex. That in 2007 or 2006, we thought US is going to rule the world forever. And everything US was probably the best exportable commodity, and 2 years later, US became a villain. Somebody from the floor reminded us about Russia. Only 3 years ago, we had this great investor talking about a commodity boom, that how China, India, etc. are going to consume endless amount of commodities, and you're going to have a commodity bull market of a crazy proportion. And there were people grabbing all kinds of assets. And now we are talking about who will buy coal and who will buy commodities and so on. So I find it's really very, very complex. And so on currencies and so on, that from worrying about a 50 yen to a dollar, today we are looking at 120 yen, and maybe that's not enough. For me, it's always been the story of enterprise. As an investor, what you really look at first is the man behind the enterprise rather than any of the numbers and complexity and the ratios and so on. And therefore, my mind is a lot more on what enables long periods of growth, long periods of change, and therefore I'm thinking of people who could see these things or who could lay foundation for great sustainable change in societies and countries in the world. So obviously we're not talking about the next 15 months as to what needs to get done, and we kind of all assume that whatever is the known agenda in terms of whether GST and stuff like that will get done. I am inclined to think of 3 things. 3 Ds popularized by Modi ji, the demand, demographics, and democracy. To me, a powerful democracy and a more skilled demographics, I think makes the biggest difference. And therefore, I'm going to talk about a few themes, and which may seem very different, very soft, very undramatic compared to the dynamics that I saw partly here. We need an economy whose character is very different from the one we are used to. We went from large government companies, licensed companies to large enterprises. Can we have an economy driven by startups? We are celebrating this event today. 15 years ago, this was a startup with Mr. Raghav Behel and other promoters joining. And what a difference you have made. As a matter of fact, if I look back on 40-odd years of my career, I think every single change was brought about what was called a startup, a new guy. In the late 70s, it was Dhirubhai Ambani who challenged things. And then we had Infosys, and we had Sun Pharma, and we had Anil Agarwal, and we had Sunil Bharti Mittal, and we had Kishore Biani, and so on. And now, of course, we have Flipkarts and Snapdeals and others. I think it is very, very important that we understand the value of this, not only from just ease of doing business, but what they bring to the table. We all lament that, we probably lost last 10 years, or maybe in some manner last 50, 60 years. Who makes up such lost time? It is the startup mind who says, oh, I want to grow 10 years in 1 year. And if we have to grow 10, 15, 20, 30 years, we need culture of that kind. I think when I look at India, I find only that category which thinks transformationally, which thinks possibilities, which thinks accountability, which thinks high risk, and so on. And most importantly to me, it is this segment which has the greatest proclivity, greatest willingness to give back. And we need a lot of it, and I'm going to talk a little about it. More reasons for this is that from a country which has not had a great investing culture, we need to create that culture. And this whole angel investing culture. I mean, if we, as a country, if I look at the demographics and our character, we are closest to America, where this has thrived, and it has not happened here. And how do we make that happen? And even more importantly, most of these companies are likely to be in the services sector, and we need a lot of employment. So the nature of our enterprise, sometimes, we get obsessed with large billion-dollar bets in refineries and infrastructure and so on. We can't forget the employment challenge. And what is my fear, and what do I see around me, is that at one level, Modi ji has said that we need to go to a rank of at least 50 in starting up business and doing business in India from, I think, an unmentionable number. What is actually happening on the ground has a lot to desire. Maybe some people in this room are aware, but I'm sure that majority of the people are not aware that most of our startups are not registered in India. Not only that they are financed by foreign VCs, which means all the capital formation is going to go abroad, they are not even registered in India. And one point of time, they will not be known as Indian companies, they will be known as Singaporean. Singapore is a popular destination. A small company like Flipkart was levied with a tax notice of something like 1,400 crores. A little too beyond the nature of economy, that how it has to be startup driven. And I think this audience is too knowledgeable for me to recount that how it is a startup, whether it was Microsoft taking on IBM and the Google and the Apple and the so on, that how they have been able to bring about change. Second is, of course, governance. And while we talk of changes in governance definitely, and Modi ji has again given a great slogan in terms of small government and big on governance, unless we make a drastic, dramatic change in our governance model, slow change is no change at all. And over the last 6-7 months, this government has made some fantastic moves, and I'm sure it will continue to do so. The opportunity is so large, we have lagged behind so much, that I would like to put 3 themes. Is governance by deadline, governance online, and governance where national interest defines interest of mine. And based on my experience and based on some of the experience of people who have been involved in such matters for a much longer period of time, is that it is, I can't even tell you that how frustrating it is that in the affairs of the government, the convention, the rule, what happened last time, etc. are so big that the greatest of leaders finds it difficult to bring about a change. And who will bring about this change is really a big question. That I'm sure that a leader in a hurry wants to do all of that. But unless we as voters are going to demand certain things, I don't know how this will happen. But I do clearly see that only 2 years ago, or maybe even a year ago, I saw that, we all saw that how large Indian businessmen were not wanting to invest 1 rupee in India. Hard businesses had started to go away. The fear is that we can miss the next wave also. So while we are in the honeymoon period, while the intent is fantastic, while the start has been fantastic, we need to be vigilant to push the envelope, push the benchmark higher and higher. And lastly, let me just look at CNBC programming. That besides your market coverage, what percentage of your programming is non-market? You have a program which is Young Turks, and you have a large number of programs which are not about now and here, which are about really the change in society, about the social initiatives and all. So I see that it is too complex for anyone to forecast what will happen over 15 years or what are the winning strategies. But when we talk of empowering ourselves, when we talk of our own self-image, when we talk of improving our own governance, when we talk of encouraging our youth in terms of startups and otherwise, I think that's a more surer bet. I, for one, have never been an active market man. I've been a very keen investor. And for me, like Vivekanand, when we see gross things, we think the causes that cause the change are gross too, but it's always the fine things that matter. They are the ones which have the real force. So I've tried to, in the short period that I was allocated, I tried to look at 3-4 issues that we need to pay attention to in an overt manner or in an appropriate manner for this to happen. I, for one, do believe that we are in for great times, and my great times are linked to the nature of leadership, the nature of people who are wanting to engage with the country in a different manner, and I mentioned some names, in the way the Prime Minister is trying to engage the average citizen. Some of these initiatives will become very successful, some of them will become probably not as successful. But one initiative that has really caught the imagination of the society is the one that relates to rural sanitation. And it may be all right to mention names that some of the best names in the country are engaged with this, and the amount of money that is being offered to solve this problem. So I think for market men, benefiting from the country is a big thing. And but I think it's also time to engage with the country. CNBC has done a great job in it. I wish you all the very best for many, many years to come. And here is an appeal to all my friends here in the room and all my countrymen that unless we engage with our country, unless we make it our responsibility, good times can slip away very easily. Life is not that simple and that easy. Thank you very much for letting me in.
The speech that you just made, what we need to do to get to achieve the potential. The underlying theme is that we may not, it's not all a path that easy to tread. We could easily undersell ourselves. I want to ask you to put on that investment banking hat of yours, the merchant banker that you were. You told us that it's the people behind the business that you look for. So clearly, Mr. Narayan Murthy and Nandan, all of them struck a chord in you. You're clearly inspired by the current Prime Minister. If you were to take India public, what is the premium? You also said we always undersell ourselves. So what is the premium you would ask India to seek from the world?
So when you take companies public, you have to also time yourself.
Okay.
And so I will raise alternative resources till I'm able to really create an image, which may be 15 to 18 months out.
Okay.
It is too early. I think we are disengaging from the past. Some of the problems have to be solved. And So re-election, I think, can begin only, say, another 12 months or so. And once that happens, I think I would ask for a very high P.
What P would you ask for India when it goes out? You said we need to raise about $50 to $100 billion.
That's think of P, and Rakesh is not here, but I think we're talking for an interest rate as a reciprocal number for P, anywhere from probably in the range of 20.
Okay, so that's more than what the market is valued today.
I think when the company is as large as India, that P has a different meaning.
Okay. So you saw $50 to $100 billion. You said we need to raise that. The caution was we need to raise that in the next 3 to 4 years. Otherwise, we miss the bus. You also said we'll have to think out of the box. You give us some ideas. How do you think out of the box? But just elaborate on how can India think out of the box?
So take, say for example, when it came to divestment, we have had 3 ideas. And we have seen the way divestment happens. That typically, if you're a listed company, the stock goes down. I cannot discuss specific ideas, but I'm just giving you the problem areas. That is typically we see price slide down dramatically. Or the government has had to resort to intercompany holdings like IOC, ONGC, etc. Or we have seen large dividends out. Can we think out of the box? I talked about railways and ports and so on. And have we attempted that can we, say for example, typically in an infrastructure company or a private company, you have a situation where you sell an existing business to build another one. Has the government done anything like this? Can we do something like this? We have huge assets that probably could be privatized. So I think it may not be appropriate for a public forum to discuss more specifically. Sure. But so both in terms of divestment, in terms of bonds, in terms of engaging with the sovereigns on the other side, because I think our engagement in G20 or now on the global level is of a very different order now, where we are not just we don't have to go out with a begging bowl. Can I make more complex deals? So I think the victory we have had at the WTO, we have been seen both as a principal player and as a facilitator without giving our quarter, I think has raised our respect. The fact that Mr. Obama is coming here has raised our respect. So I think this whole premium enhancement by the man of the moment is been happening. Okay. And I think the financing has to follow. If the financing doesn't follow, then maybe we'll miss them.
Okay. Interesting. You said because while the rest of the world always says get out of just take your money and let others do everything. You said the government should, you give an example, sell some business to us to start some new businesses. So what, when you say business, you obviously mean areas. What areas should you want the government in where it's not today?
No, I think you see improving the human stock, right? So I think safety, health, skills. And when I say health, I'm talking about sanitation and so on. And providing the facilitation for building infrastructure rather than building it all oneself. I think those are the prime areas where we need to use those funds.
Okay. You've got great faith in Mr. Modi. You said governance by deadline, governance by online, and governance that nation before mind. Those are the only 3. You need those 3. It's not easy. Even for one man as popular as Mr. Modi, that means you've got to break through vested interests of, as you know, tremendous order. Has the mood in the nation changed that the nation will back him to do that?
You see, sometimes the way to handle a congestion is to bypass it. And so if you've seen Mr. Modi, he consistently has developed a sloganeering, not for the sake of it, but as a strategy, where he said development is my only agenda. And can I make these people, instead of engaging with them in their rules, in their arena, can I change the battleground? Can I let their imagination move from their day-to-day task to something else where there is no convention, there is no precedent, there is no law, and you have to rewrite the law, etc. And it is possible. So I cannot get into specifics, but I've seen some of this. Say, for example, the history of Electricity Act in 2003. When the Electricity Act was passed, it changed so many things. It was not only probably the largest financial closure, because NTPC has a large outstanding, states had outstanding. How in one go large amount of debts were settled and a future course was created. And if you talk about open access, you talk about all the solutions that people have been struggling for, they completely are ready to engage at a different level. So you have to deal with things in a very more imaginative manner, and I think we have enough precedents, more will be done.
So you set out that yes, we can grow, if we do the following things, we can grow. So let's assume we do it. And we therefore enter into what many in the room think we will enter into, a multi-year bull run. You also said investors, we need a lot of investment. I know you're not only talking about investment in the stock markets, but let me just come back. We are woefully underinvested in the stock market. Indians as a class are woefully underinvested in the stock market. So there's a lot of people out there who, if they want to secure their financial future, it's time they got into these markets. How should they go about it?
As I said that, we have to create an environment for new businesses. It is the new businesses that create massive amount of wealth, not established companies. So we need a lot of them. So whether through IPOs, through private equity, through funds who are much larger participants. Like the government has announced a 10,000 crore fund for startups. We haven't heard any meaningful follow-up. One follow-up I heard was that the banks will give their surplus funds to SIDBI, who will be the anchor investor, and maybe have their difficulties. It speaks volumes of the intent of the government. But I think we all collectively need to put the pressure on the government, give them feedback. That the government is ready to receive the feedback, that we need to, this 10,000 crores has to become 100,000. Or ideally, why should the government be doing this? We don't want the government in enterprise primarily. Why can't society find methods? Why can't we as opinion makers create a facility where this amount is 100,000 and we really become large angel investors in many businesses? And that's how we spawn a lot of new enterprises, and they go public, and that's how people will come. So it is the lack of IPOs and whatever happened. See, one other feature of the startups is, typical startup is, that they beat rent seeking. I think that we went down seriously by the rent seeking. So we need to create a counter for the rent seeking also. So multiple things that I think without that, new class of companies, new class of investments, people will again go back because the market is too expensive. Either they make mistakes, create a crash, or they go to alternative methods.
Okay, so back to the government on helping create that new class of companies. Absolutely. And getting that this thing back. A question that's been we've been debating through the day, and it's not a 15-year-long question, but has the commodity super cycle really ended in your opinion?
I mean, I believe in the conductive cycle, that these cycles is very difficult to say where they begin, where they end. But I think for the time being, given how liquidity was being created, how liquidity was being managed, and the power of the powers that be, I think money was a large part of the commodity cycle. I think that money has indeed moved in. So I don't see things falling in one fell swoop, but I do see that the great vision that we had only 3 years ago, that nothing will be available, I think clearly has gone.
Mr. Bhanshali, thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure.
Pleasure having you. Thank you.